Well, hello and welcome back. I am currently filming on my new camera, so it's just gone my birthday. I was very lucky, and some money I had saved and a bit of birthday money. I have treated myself to one of the new Insta360 Go 3S cameras. I keep seeing all the different cameras and I love them and they're great, but there's never been one that has screamed at me that would actually be useful until now. So here I am. We should be able to get much more interesting content going forward. Anyway, that is not why I'm here. I'm walking up to the field. Hello, darling. It is beautifully sunny. Dublin is out in no neck. We are making our way into spring, but basically I am here, hello, to talk to you about some of the questions I've been getting in regards to keeping this one looking like she does. So I'm gonna have to face this way because the sun is so bright. Where are we? There's Dublin. There's her bum. You can have her bum. Basically, I have been getting questions on Instagram mainly. I posted a photo, I think it was from like our first show, and there's like a side view photo of Dublin. I'll post it here. And I had so many questions and like DMs from people asking what it was I was feeding to keep her looking like this. And I just found I was kind of explaining that yes, whilst food plays a large part of it, that's not the be all and end all of keeping a veteran horse kind of fit and well. Part of it does work that she's currently foraging the hedge, so I will go into feeding in a minute, but one of the big things is that I try and keep her living as natural as possible. So I say natural as possible because they are obviously in paddocks. This is one of Dublin's and then she has the other side over here, but effectively what she's doing is she's currently sleeping. That's an old field shelter that won't ever get used for her to actually go in. It's just too old. We've just fenced it off. And we put a gate in front of it, but we are going to just sort of fence it off a little bit better, and then I will be using it to my advantage to add things like salt licks. I want to make like a bit of a water bar where you can make turmeric water, electrolyte water, like all these different things for them to be able to like select and use themselves. And then by having access to them like on their own terms, they will be getting the amount that they need because they know when they need something, and they'll top themselves up. She also has things like these licket holders in the field, and I create little things to keep her wandering around, make sure she's still moving. She's got access to things like bark to chew on, grass, hay. She's got 2 different water troughs, kind of keep her moving. So yeah, like your field doesn't have to just be grassy field. You can introduce lots of different things. We are going to put a telegraph pole into the ground. I say we will because obviously Brad has hurt his arm and he can't drive, so he can't drive the tractor. But on said telegraph pole will be like grooming brushes that I will drill into it, and I will also add a tie ring for a hay net so that when she is living out in the summer, her hay is lasting a little bit longer. It's good to have some of it on the ground because it's just natural for them, but then sometimes I do want her to eat a little bit slower. But yes, I'm gonna go back into the yard now and probably try and badly explain what I feed her. Of course, I am not a nutritionist. I'm not medically trained, I'm not nutritionally trained. Everything I do is just extensive research I've done off of the internet. I just Googled like a hell of a lot. I spoke to lots of different feed companies, just told them all about Dublin, and I just gathered as much information as I possibly could, really. And from that, I've picked up a bit, so let's go in the feed room and try and explain it all. Okie dokie, feed. This is probably one of the most or more important subjects. Before this video goes any further, I'd just like to point out that I am not an alcoholic, and the can of Guinness is in fact a little pick-me-up that we give the horses. I think also this shows I'm a messy cow. I think this is from their Christmas Day breakfast. But this is where it gets a little bit strange, because this is not just a generic kind of, this is what I feed my horse, because for me it changes not the feed base changing, but quantities and things like that change for me all the time. I'm always looking at Dublin's condition, her weight, her temperament, and what we have going on in terms of like ridden work, and I will up and reduce as and when what's needed. I also do a lot of seasonal foraging. So I'll start with that. Basically, I'll get my marigolds out and my scissors. I will go and cut down stinging nettles. We allow them to dry, chop them all up. They will go moldy if you do too many, so I tend to just do like a week's work at a time, a week's worth at a time. But these are really, really good for iron and like natural coat shine, things like that. So natural foraging is incredible. We also pick sticky weed. So sticky weed is actually a natural anti-inflammatory, and it's like a detox. So if they're on bute and things like that for whatever reason, feeding sticky weed is a free way of helping them out a little bit. So yeah, natural detox and really, really good for anti-inflammatory. Dublin had a really bad allergic reaction, and I was feeding her sticky weed, like quite a large amount of it, twice a day, morning and night. And I actually honestly think it really, really helped. The vet was actually like, yes, it's such a good free tool that grows in your bushes. So when you find sticky weed, and it's also just a nice treat, they really, really enjoy it. But yes, first off, Dublin is just on it's molly chaff, like light. The problem we're having is she's not particularly enjoying it. I don't think it's a problem with the food. It's just that I just like the second bag now. It's just not her favourite, but it's got lots of little bits in there. But of course, it's low calorie, it's low sugar, it's low everything. So it's really, really good for her. She's just not a massive fan of it. But I'm not too worried at the minute, because I thought to myself, well, I'll put like her on mint. So another thing that we do is we grow mint in a pot out on the yard. It dies in the winter, obviously, which is not helpful. You have to just buy mint. But in the summer, we'll just pick it like the night before, break it up a little bit, let it dry out, pop it in the feed, and it's really, really good to encourage them to eat. But I was actually very, very lucky. And I think in January, I won an Instagram competition with Amiga Equine, and they had a large bag of spearmint, and I just had this tub. It's an old Bird's Fat Ball tub. I took the sticker off the back, stuck it on, and I have my big box of spearmint, and a scoop of that in every feed has really helped and made her eat her dinner. So at least now I know if she doesn't really like it, I can pick the mint. But of course, when it runs out, I will try and pop her back on a different one. They do have the kind of like the molasses-free everyday chaff, but I just have to worry about her weight, especially now we're going into the summer, or the spring. The grass is going to start coming through, and she is just such a good doer. Ultimately, she's only really having chaff in order to get her supplements into her, but she just looks at the grass and hay and just gets fat. And some people would be like, oh, that's so good for a veteran, but actually it's really hard, because you then naturally want to just not feed them because they're fat and they're not getting all the like extra bits that they need. So last year I did find that Dublin went a little bit sluggish, and I'd stripped her food back so much that I actually forgot about kind of adding in like a vitamin thing. She was on chaff, light, and a joint supplement, and just her gutties when she needed it. And so therefore she wasn't really like getting any vitamin or anything like that. So I had to kind of rectify that, which again is when I went and did some Googling, which has led me to, when she's having her chaff, she is also just having half a little cup of pink mash. This is the basic pink mash. It's not the conditioning pink mash, because I don't need the kind of like fattening side of it. This will obviously condition to a certain extent, but it's not the one that's like labeled as conditioning. This is just from Key Flow Feeds. She's having a very, very small amount. Again, it's tasty, so it makes her eat her food, but she's just getting a little bit of help, I suppose, for the condition, but also it's really, really, really good for their gut. And I've found that as Dublin's older, her gut's so sensitive. So new haylage bell being opened, when we do stayaways and she's on haylage all the time, not grass, or when the fresh grass comes through. So this is a really good basic little thing I add to her food for those elements. I then also add, especially now that we are again going into spring and the sugars are coming in through the grass, I actually have one of the large bags of the hydration mash from Premier Performance. They can have this all year round. It doesn't have to just be something you feed them in the summer when they've done a lot of work. It is full of electrolytes, but it's full of like so many other different things as well. But electrolytes is so good for laminitic horses. So with the grass coming through and her being a bit laminitic, she's literally getting half a little cup just to keep that down, and it's keeping all the, it's like giving her more goodness. I'm not going to go through all the ingredients because, like I said, I'm not a nutritionist, but it is all on the website, and it was something that I discussed with them on the trade stand. So she's getting just a small amount, and then in the summer when she's done, or like when I've travelled her somewhere, she's having the proper scoops worth in a bucket of water. But for now, she just has a watery feed with a little bit in there. And then we get into the real nitty gritty of my concoctions of supplements. So this top shelf is mine, but so is all of the stuff on top here. So I'm gonna try and run through this. So yes, I use these tubs, although the stuff's underneath the shelf, it does kind of leak. So I just have her joint supplement, again from Premier Performance, in this one, and she just sort of gets a scoop a day, so 2 halves. Then I have my gut ease. So although she's having the pink mash, I tend to feed a little bit of this when I know there's a change. So I'll just top up the pink mash by feeding a little bit of that. It's a little bit better than the pink mash. And then, behind, I have got my multivitamin. Now that is running out, but that's kind of on purpose because I am about to try this herb powder from Hilton Herbs. So this is a bit of a collaboration / trial. This is just their essential daily health kind of vitamin powder. But they make everything from like 100% natural ingredients. All the stuff that Dublin can't have isn't in there. So great start. We'll be trying this as soon as that one's run out. So of course I will let you know. They have also sent though like a detox and an Equi-Immune. I think that's how is it going to focus? Yeah, Equi-Immune or Equi-Immune, which I'm really looking forward to giving a go. It's always nice to try new things. So yeah, that's just kind of like here. And then this is like my overflow. So I touched on the nettles being in the hedge, but in the winter obviously the nettles don't grow. This was actually a free sample of dried nettle from Premier Performance. They do great little sample packs, and I've just got a collection of scoops and jars. So that's currently dry nettle. I'll give a little bit of that in the occasional food. Electrolyte cookies, which I was using before I had the hydration mash. But again, if I think her feet are really hot, if they come in, she'll just eat one of those like a treat, and it's a really good way of just getting some extra electrolyte into her. This is just some energy that was left over from when she went through that sluggish phase, and I wasn't sure what it was, but it's left over. It's good to have. If she's done quite a lot of work and I think she's a bit tired, she can have a little bit of that. Then I just have the calming powder. Again, she was on the veteran chaff, and the veteran chaff was sending her loopy. So again, luckily they send free samples with some of their deliveries, and I've just sort of stored up the calming powder, and when she was on that chaff, she was having to have a scoop of that every day. So that wasn't ideal. But yeah, so the census is like at the minute she's just on the 1 scoop of chaff, and I only need to use this amount. So she's effectively only having chaff to enable her to have her supplements, but she's on one of those, the half little cup of the pink mash and the half little cup of the electrolytes, and then as and when what we're doing, so joint supplement obviously, and then I'll up it if she is going to be going in the school, or if we're going to a show, I'll just sort of like up the quantity before we go. The gut ease, again, I'm just adding it in as and when we need it. The spearmint is obviously to make her eat, and then the multivitamin, which I will be trying, the new one. So I'll just sort of see how it goes. It's always good to try new things. You can always swap back if you don't really see like much of a difference. But yeah, so basically what I'm trying to get at without my like trained knowledge is don't be afraid to strip your feed back and just really make sure you know what you're feeding. I basically started this process because I discovered I was feeding a chaff It was the veteran chaff actually, and it had like joint supplement stuff in it, and then I was wasting money by buying joint supplement on top of it and feeding it. And when like all these supplement companies or the nutritionists will say like they only need a certain amount of something in every food, and you're then unknowingly upping that quantity and adding so much more than they need because you're feeding it in the chaff and then you're feeding it in like another food and then you're feeding it as a supplement. So yeah, totally stripped it back when I couldn't. Her weight was just fluctuating, her mood was fluctuating, and I was just like, whoa, let's just stop. And I stopped everything, and I mean everything. She was on like chaff for 3 days, and then I was like, okay, I do know that this is now a chaff with nothing in it, so we'll add the joint. Then her gut and her poo was getting a little bit sloppy, so I was like, right, we definitely need a gut supplement, or we need something for her gut. But I do also know that I want something to help her out because she's getting older, which is where I Googled and found that pink mash would tick both of those boxes. So I got the pink mash. I do still have the gut ease because the pink mash gut just isn't quite enough, so the gut ease is just a really good way of like topping that up. Of course, I've spoken to all the feed companies about this, and again I spoke to Premier about the electrolytes and the laminitis and things like that, and they said, well, don't buy electrolyte cookies if you have the hydration mash, just feed her a little bit of that in every food, and it's really, really good for her, and I'm not having to buy electrolytes on top of what effectively is a huge amount of electrolyte food that I already have. So yes, just sort of strip it back and you'll be able to, work it out from there. Okay, excuse the interruption. I am also currently sat in a lay-by in my car because I have just sort of finished editing this video and I was driving back to the horse and I thought, well, there's a segment that is going to annoy me. I didn't explain very well when I'm talking about stripping back your feed. This is because a few people that I've spoken to, both online and in person, have been sucked into this whole, my veteran's not very good at keeping condition or weight, and they are feeding excessive amounts of food. So for starters, you have to remember that your horse's stomach is literally the size of a rugby ball. So if you picture a rugby ball, can you fit your feed in that? Because if you can't, all they are doing is pooing it out before they've had any chance to absorb any of the goodness that you're trying to put in. So not only is it a massive waste of money, but it's just a massive waste of time. So when I talk about stripping it back, that's what I mean. And it's also because a girl was feeding like conditioning cubes, competition mix, chaff, and then having to put him on a calmer, and it was like, but you're feeding like competition mix to hype him up, and which, well, it doesn't necessarily just hype them up, but it's full of all the stuff that would hype them up, and then having to counteract it with karma, and this horse was just getting ridiculous amounts of feeds, and it was a bit of like an eye-opener, I suppose. So I think it's really easy when you've got veterans to kind of worry about the way that they look and the way that they're coping and kind of just pile in all the food. So when I'm talking about stripping it back, that is what I mean. Right, let's go back. So, because of the lovely weather, I have just gone back out and taken Dub's top rug off, which reminded me to mention about rugging. Now, I am absolutely not telling you to over rug your horse here, okay? Let's just get that out in the open. This is not what I'm about to explain. However, I'm only saying that because the amount of times I say to people I keep my horse warm, they're like, I don't want to over rug. It's not all we're getting at. But yes, keeping your horse, especially your veteran horse, warm in terms of they are warm enough when it drops temperature. And what not naturally horses would do is use their own energy to keep themselves warm. They're of course therefore using their own energy and using up like their condition. There's that saying, isn't there, like, let the fat horses shiver the fat off. I only think that really works when your horse is like in poor condition, but you do not want them to be stood around feeling the cold, quite capable of keeping themselves warm, but in doing so they are burning up and using all of the condition that you're working so hard to put on. So no, I do not over rug Dublin, and she's not hot, but she's always warm enough that she's not using her energy. If I put my hand under the rug and I'm a bit like, she's not like warm, hot, and you know the temperature is going to drop, then I'll simply just pop, I don't know, 50 gram rug on over the top, or I'll make sure she has extra hay than she usually would, because of course eating hay and food keeps them warmer. So yeah, I'm not telling you to over rug, but rugging is really, really important. Naturally, horses are just going to use their own energy to keep warm, and the older they get, the more it's harder for them, and then you just see the condition kind of like drop. I also will use leg wraps when it drops below like minus temperatures. I use the Apple app. I've got an Apple phone, and if you go on the weather app, it will tell you like the actual temperature and then what the feel like temperature is. So there's been some nights where I've put Dublin to bed and it reads like 3 degrees, and you go on the feels like temperature and it's dropping to like -4. Crazy. But I will put leg wraps on all 4 legs. It keeps the joints warmer, it keeps even her hocks a little bit warmer, despite, I mean, a vet told me that. They were like, it's amazing how much better it is for the hock just wrapping the lower leg. I use the Premier Equine leg wraps. I have seen that Dry Rug are doing some with the Dry Rug material, but again, they're padded and warm. But you can't beat just a bit of Gamgee and bandage if you haven't got anything else, bandages, anything like that. Just to keep your horse's legs warm when it drops below and it's freezing, makes such a huge difference. Well, we find ourselves now stood back in front of my board on the wall. Now, you all know I have a slight fetish obsession with this thing, but it is perfectly valid, and that is because obviously it goes without saying, there's no point feeding all this stuff and doing all these things if you're not actually turning that into muscle. As soon as veteran horses drop muscle, they just look poor, and it's not through any fault of their own. It's just because of how aging their bodies are. You know, you can have these really beautiful veteran horses that retire through no fault of their own. They're obviously due to retire. They need to retire at some point, or they do an injury, and then the owners panic that their horses are dropping like condition and all this, and it's just because muscle loss on a veteran looks far worse than the muscle loss on an 8, 9, 10-year-old, and it is just that it just doesn't look great. So when you are trying to compete a veteran, and conformation and condition and that come into it, keeping muscle on them is really, really important. But you don't want your veteran horse, especially Dublin at 25, she does not need to be in 7 days a week of work. That's just detrimental to her joints and to everything else, and you're undoing it all. Everything that we are speaking about in this hopefully short and sweet vlog all has to tie in together. There's so much to think about, and it has to all tie in. You can't just be like, right, I'm going to feed this, 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 and this, and then I'm only going to work them 1 day a week, or I'm going to feed less, but I'm going to work them 7 days a week, because it's just not going to work out. You have to have everything in balance. So with what I'm feeding, when I say I change it, I will up it and down it in relation with the work that Dublin is doing, which is why I keep an eye on it, because I'll stand this side. I tend to ride, gosh, it's anywhere 3 to 5 days a week, but on average it's 3 or 4 days a week, especially when it was darker in the winter, which is why I colour code and put everything on the board. Obviously, if you've not seen about my board, there's a whole explanation of how I do this in another video, but for now this is just basically what it is. I colour code it, obviously I can keep an eye on it, because hacking obviously is great. I'll hack as much as possible, but I don't want to be lunging her too often. She doesn't want to be going out like showing too often either. So if I find that a couple of qualifiers are quite close together, then I can look at it and go, okay, I need to up the food a little bit, and I need to tie in that I'm doing plenty of like chilled out hacks on the buckle, plods around the woods in between, so that she's having chance to relax and just stretch her muscles rather than working her hard, because she's going to be going out and about. So it's just a really, really easy way to see the entire year, to see the kind of shows that I'm planning on doing. This all changes as well, like all the black shows, I'm not going to all of them, they're just what's available to us. But I can sort of see them all laid out, and then I can make Dublin's work plan fit in. The schooling sessions and the lunging sessions are very far and few between, but I will always try and make sure I've got walk poles out. So like if you see lunging, I'm not just spinning her around in circles. Again, not good for her joints. A lot of it will be walk poles, trot poles. I never really canter her because it's too small, but doing all that kind of like building it up thing. physio said to me that if you can't get to a water treadmill, one of the next best things you can do is actually walk poles. So I always try and make sure I am doing walk poles once or twice a week. I'll leave them out in the school if I can, and sometimes when I get back from a hack, I'll just go in the school and walk her over the walk poles quite a few times, and then that is pretty much enough. So basically that is a little video debrief of everything I was typing and sending back in Instagram DMs that I was having. I felt it was much easier just to pop a little video out, because I always do find that if if 2 or 3 people are asking the question, then there's probably another 2 or 3 that are thinking about the same questions, but they're just not sending it. So doing a little video, I hope it helps. Again, I will kind of reiterate that everything I have said, I'm not medically trained, I'm not nutritionally trained. This is just me Googling and like just stripping everything back, testing out different brands, but test them for long enough, testing them out, seeing what's best. I end up going back normally to one I've used for years, because like the new ones just, you know, they're not making any difference. And then obviously you can pick the one that works better for you financially. Don't just go for the higher end brand, because horses are so different that what works for one horse won't necessarily work for another. But anyway, I hope that has helped a little bit. If you do have any more questions, please do put them below. Send them in an Instagram DM, do whatever. If I get 100 tons of different messages, then I know I've not done this video very well, so apologies. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.